After a 26-year break, wow, that time went fast, we have a new Babysitters Club book. This was published on July 7th, 2026. It is called the Babysitters Club Fan Edition. If you look at the spine, it is clearly labeled Book 1. I have some big thoughts here. So this book it actually has 7 authors. And each of the authors wrote each of the different girls separately. They never clearly identify which is which. So our authors are Anne Martin, who I'm going to assume wrote Christie's story. She always said that Christie was her favorite. Becky Albertalli, I have read her books before. I don't know which author she was in this. Co Booth, Sarah Kuhn, I don't know them. Peter Larangis, definitely glad he came back. His books were always the best of the ghostwriters. And Jonna Malcolm, which they now tell us is the pen name for, let me make sure I got the names exactly right. It's Jonna Beecham, right? Jonna Beecham and Malcolm Hillgardner, who typically wrote Mallory's books and no one else's. So I'm going to assume that they wrote Mallory here. And Emma Straub, no idea who she wrote. So we also got new pictures of each of the girls, and they pretty much follow the stereotypes that we have come to know them by. A lot of them, their handwriting did change, and I was not prepared to be nitpicking at this level. I will say Stacy's handwriting is exactly the same as it was every time that we saw it. So her penmanship author was one of the originals who came back. Mallory's writing is very similar, but she doesn't do the happy little cat face anymore. Aw, sad. So this book is basically like a super special where each of the girls has an adventure and they send postcards to each other. There is no overarching theme though. The plot seems to be that it's summer vacation and they don't all go to the same place, and the places that they go have nothing to do with each other, and most of their adventures are out of character. So let us go through but girl by girl, and I guess we'll just go in the order that they're shown here. So the first one is Christy, and her vacation is spent going up to Maine. Is it Maine? Is it Massachusetts? I don't know. She's going to an island with the Papadakis. I always thought this was so weird. All the way back to Boy Crazy Stacy, I thought this was so weird that a family would take a babysitter on vacation with them. And it's not a nanny. It's not a live-in position of someone who is raising your children for you. It's a middle schooler going on vacation with your family to help out. And I always thought that was just kind of weird, and I could think of so many different ways this would be awkward. Obviously, in my family, we never took friends on vacation, so that could be part of it as well. So over the years, I know we have all joked at some point or other that Christy was going to be a lesbian, and yeah, she makes a new friend who turns into a crush. So that is definitely messing up the continuity canon of the series. A big problem with this book is that it's not clear where it is set. For example, she talks about her ex-boyfriend Bart, who we know they did the Christy plus Bart ? Was book number 95. So, okay, this could be after book 95. So she meets her vacation friend is named Rowan, and she's a photographer, and she doesn't really bring much to this story. Other things that didn't quite make sense with Christy is that Sari Papadakis now talks. I don't recall that she ever talked in the main series. And something that's really weird, again, is the timing of this and where does it fit in the series? Because no one has cell phones. But Mr. and Mrs. Papadakis are both working while they're on vacation on this island. It doesn't say what they do. It just says their work was put away for the day. given the current era where so many people have the capability to work remotely, but that does require computers and internet, I don't quite know where we fit in the technology scheme here. So the writing with Christy, kind of exploring her feelings and what am I feeling here? It was kind of a little out of character. That would be more more Stacy, feeling, butterflies and all gushy, and definitely not Christy, but it was well written. I will give it that. It just kind of out of character for her. Underneath is Marianne, who is the first narrator in this book. And Marianne is staying home in Connecticut in Stony Brook this summer. And her dad tells her she needs to get some hobbies and get some friends. And yeah, I agree with Dad. So the first thing that she decides she's going to do is she's going to learn how to quilt. Even though she learned this in book 66, made Marianne. And, Logan's out of town too. He went down to Kentucky for the summer. She considers she's going to start stamp collecting. And then she realizes these aren't exactly the hobbies that would force her to interact with other people. So she begins a lending library for her neighborhood, even though this plotline has already been done by the Pike family. I don't know which book exactly, but I know that it happened. And she also decides that she's going to volunteer at the pet shelter. Very on brand for Marianne. She also spends a lot of time babysitting Karen Brewer. Elizabeth Brewer is working from home. Again, not sure how the technology of that works out. And Andrew and David Michael are at a camp. We don't know where. We don't know what kind of camp. They're just gone. Why did Karen not go? Reasons. So Marianne does come a little bit out of her shell. One thing that was very weird is she has a run-in with Grace and Cokie. And let me just read this. It's on page 144, because this just seems very out of character. So she's talking about the pet fostering, and Cokie and Grace were laughing too hard to hear me. They walked off, Grace tossing one final comment over her shoulder. Karen glanced warily at me. What's a dork? She wanted to know. And, I could swear Karen has called all of her siblings dorks at some point or other in this series. Moving on to Dawn. Dawn is a coworker, or is a counselor, and Dawn is a mess. She is a counselor and a counselor in training at a theater camp. And she tells us a lot of the kids at this camp have professional headshots and experience in both Matilda and Annie. They are going to some sort of theater camp. It's compared to another camp in the Berkshires. I don't know if this is actually where it is. It doesn't say. Something very surprising is that Dawn is now a singer-songwriter, and she's a big theater kid now, which I never saw in her future, but okay. So she goes to this camp as a counselor in training, and somehow she becomes the co-director. And the main director is only like 16 or 17, and he regularly just disappears. So if I'm the parents of these children with professional acting experience, and we're left with a 13-year-old who has no theater experience of her own, I would be furious. We have to assume these parents are paying major money for this program. Every one of Dawn's chapters takes place at rehearsal. We have no idea what happens at this camp outside of rehearsal hours. She wrote the play, and it is about the environment. Of course it is. Her brother, Jeff, is at this camp, as are Mallory's triplet brothers. And what's interesting is so many of the books, particularly book 39, Poor Mallory, they paint the family as not having all that much money. And they're sending 3 kids to a bougie acting camp. Dawn tells us she's from California, where everyone is laid back and casual. I know a lot of people from California. I would not describe them this way. Moving on, up to the top corner, we have Jessie. And Jessie is perfect, as she always is. So Jessie, and I do feel bad for her, she had auditioned and gotten accepted to a very prestigious dance program in New Haven, but she then developed a stress fracture in her foot, and she has to take off a while from dancing. She's 11, maybe a little young to be in point. I'm not sure if her dance teacher was really all that good. So she and Mom go to Mom's college reunion. Is this something that really happens? I've read so many books with this plot point, and I have not met a single person in my entire life who has ever gone to a college reunion. So we learn that Mom went to a fictitious school called Ida B. Wells College, and we know that the school is in Maryland. She didn't say where, so just for funsies, I mapped it from Stamford, which we know is very close to Stony Brook. I mapped Stamford to Annapolis, and it is 266 miles. Also for funsies, I mapped the distance from Stamford to New Haven, assuming Jessie had gone to that program. It is 44 miles and currently estimated 1 hour, 24 minutes. So I don't know if that program was going to be residential or if one of her poor working parents or Aunt Cecilia was going to be spending 3 hours of time in traffic every day. So Mom has 2 college roommates, and they bring their kids, and Jessie babysits them and meets another girl. And of course, she's perfect because everything about Jessie is perfect. One thing that I did like with Jessie's story, and her handwriting is completely different in this one. I never would have guessed that was Jessie's handwriting. Is in every book she tells us she's Black. She's the only Black student in the 6th grade at Stony Brook Middle School. And it feels like they mention it and then move on. And I thought this book did a lot better job of showing this instead of just telling us. So just 2 real quick examples. She tells us her hair has been done in box braids, and Mom's made-up school is an HBCU. So I thought that was a good writing choice there instead of just telling us about the family. Jessie, her story's fine. It is sad to see her struggling, not being able to dance. And she's kind of exploring other options. She does a little choreography in this one, and she enjoys that. Claudia goes to Los Angeles, where she is also a camp counselor, and she's working at an art program, and they call her a student teacher, which in my state, you have to go to at least a 2-year college program after your bachelor's degree to do your student teaching. But I guess in Los Angeles, you can do it when you're 13. She has 20 kids in this art program, and they're given a project to paint a mural. Someone has already designed it, and it is basically a paint by number, which the kids don't love. I can understand that. So they go for a walk, and they pick up all sorts of crap, basically, for lack of a better word, and they glue it onto the mural. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out. She spends time in Little Tokyo with a family that we've never heard of before, and she has no interaction with them, so that's kind of weird. Their daughter is Betty, and her grandmother was named Hina, who was best friends with Mimi. So Claudia is trying to find out more about Mimi. One cute thing about her story is one of her little students couldn't pronounce her name, so they called her Cloudy, and I thought that was really cute. Stacy basically gets a repeat of Boy Crazy Stacy. Yay. She's staying home in Stony Brook, and she's watching Charlotte every day from 2 until 6. Charlotte is going to a camp at the library. I've never heard of a library camp. It sounds fantastic. And so Stacy's going to watch her every day from 2 until her parents get home from work. They go to the county fair, and they meet a dreamy boy named Nick, who it just so turns out is in a band called the Dream Boys. And I'm very curious if they wind up turning into the Bad Boys at the concert where she later gets in trouble. One thing that was funny about her is she and Charlotte are walking around the fair, and they look at all the different food options and decide to eat corn on the cob, which would not be my first choice or my 5th choice or my any choice, but okay. And, it's basically boy crazy Stacy. She's shirking responsibilities again and pawning off Charlotte and the work onto Marianne. And of course, Marianne does it. And lastly, we have Mallory, who is going to Ireland to stay with her mom's cousin. Again, they have always presented this family as not having a ton of money, and they're just sending Mallory to Ireland. Okay, so this family has a horse, and Mallory is scared of riding. So it's obviously after book 54, Mallory and the Dream Horse, but it's before book 126, the all-new Mallory Pike. She tells us she has bright red hair, even though every single other book has described her as having auburn hair. And even the picture looks more auburn than bright red. And she brings the family t-shirts from an ice cream shop called The Scoop, which we have never heard of. So she has a great time, and she doesn't write the entire time that she's there. She's a little surprised by that. But she does get over her fear of horses, so that is good. And the family's very, very nice. She has a great time. So overall, this book, it was disappointing. I was going to say it was fine, but it genuinely was disappointing. It could have been so much more. So the Sweet Valley High book that's set like 20 years later, I've certainly complained about that one a lot. But at least it lets us see the girls at a different age, and it lets us see where they are in life. And this book, I think, would have been significantly better if it picked up after the main series had ended. So it could have been immediately after, where Marianne's living in the new house, or it could have been when they're in high school, or it could have, what would have really been good is if we'd done it after the older girls graduate high school and everyone's starting to go their separate ways. I think that would have been really good. Just any time in the future, because this is just a nothing book. It's basically a super special, but nothing happens, and there's no huge coherent story. And granted, most of those stories were absurd, but at least there was an overarching plot line, whereas this one is just our plot line is it's summer vacation. So, I mean, sad to say, there's fan fiction that is better than this. And yet, when book 2 comes out, presumably next summer, I will buy it again. So, mixed feelings on this one. It was definitely comfort reading, but it made me scratch my head at the same time. So, this was the Babysitters Club Fan Edition, Babysitter Summer. Thanks for listening. Bye.